Hey HCDA and welcome back to Satisfactory. The build you see before you was by far my most ambitious build yet. We are aiming for 7 different outputs, and I don't mean 7 items being created in here, no, I mean 7 different things coming out, because I was lagging a little bit behind. Now I have to admit, this taught me a lot about what not to do, and it actually went as far as almost driving me to quit the game, as well as inspiring a complete new playthrough. So there's going to be a lot more about that in a different video, but for now let's just focus on the build. You see, I had a problem. I still had this manual facility over here where I was manually putting in some items to make several different other items, and I actually didn't automate quite a few things that we have unlocked quite a while ago. So for example, I don't have motors unlocked, I don't have either of the new things I need for the elevator phases unlocked. Well, I have them unlocked, but I haven't actually automated them yet. So, and there's a couple of other things like that. So I figured, well, why not play catch up? I don't have a lot of time this week. I will just make one facility that makes all of that. And for the veterans among you, stop laughing. I know that this was a very bad idea, but I went with that nonetheless. So the idea behind this build is pretty straightforward. There's 7 items that I have unlocked that I still want to make, being the adaptive control unit and the modular engines that we're going to need for the elevator, the heavy modular frames that we're going to need in order to make those, computers, circuit boards, motors, and actually a little bit of leftovers for encased industrial beams, because we need those a lot more than we used to due to the fact that we now have the new tier of belts unlocked. So in order to make all of that, we are going to do, we're going to need a lot of base materials. I did the math, and it turns out we need a whole lot of smelters. We have a couple of foundries over there. We have some constructors making the base things like the iron plates as well as the rods. And the idea is because as you get to the higher tier items, you typically need less buildings. You also well, basically you need the base items in order to make those more advanced items. So the idea of this entire build was very straightforward. We'll just build up, we'll make a ground layer where we have all these base facilities. There's actually quite a few of those, as you can see. And then each layer will basically be the next tier of items. We'll need less buildings, so we can kind of let those come together in a triangle type of form. So that's where the half pyramid that I showed you at the start of this video came from. Sounds very straightforward. The idea is simple, the execution on the other hand, not as much. So setting up the basics for this facility was actually really straightforward. It's just a matter of planning out what you need, then you place down all the buildings you need in order to make those. So for example over here I have the computers being made, and I also knew, well, next to the computers I'm going to need the heavy modular frames. I did take the effort to kind of think of what the input and outputs were for each specific building and tried to place them on the correct side of the general building. So for example, I probably going to have to move these heavy modular frames to the other side, because the computers are going to be used in the adaptive control units, I believe, and those will likely be produced over here, so the modular frames probably have to be moved over there so that we can use those for the engines and things like that. So the basic idea, once again, is really simple, but it does take some additional thought. We also have this huge moth thing flying over the head. That was actually something that we noticed after I started building this, so we'll have to make sure we don't actually build up too far. And we're pretty much done here, but the triangle shape will turn out, I think, to be just below the path of this moth. And it actually turns out to be really nice because it's kind of flying down to the side of my triangle, so that's completely unintentional, but it's a nice bonus. So one floor below we have all the secondary units being made, so the reinforced iron plates, a huge amount of those actually. We have modular frames being made, we have smart plating being made, we have encased industrial beams being made. What else? We also have stators being made. Now the thing with this is these all these different items, these like tier 2 or 3 items in my mind, that's what I'm calling them, all need quite different inputs. I'm actually using a few secondary recipes as well, alternate recipes I believe those are called. And the idea is that we're going to have belts in a second level below here, where we're going to feed all of those inputs through underground, and then we are going to have those nice little belts coming up from the floor into these buildings. Now that does mean we're going to have to fit in quite a few belts below here, so that will likely be the next stage of this project, which is going to look something like this. Now this is just the first start, I have the other half to do. It actually takes quite a lot of time to actually set this up correctly, but all in all, I do think this looks really nice. Now that also means that we are going to have to fiddle around with these belts, so I have a total of 6 different belts below here, and the interesting thing is we can actually fit more than one thing on a single belt, because we can use the smart splitters to make sure it actually goes into the correct lift. And well, yeah, if we would have to have a separate belt for every different item, we would actually need more belts than we have space for. Now, retroactively, after the fact thinking caused me to think, well, maybe I should have done this different, maybe make this floor a little higher, and instead use stacked belts so we didn't have to spread it all around. But for now, I do think this should work. I did the math, we should have no more items on a single belt than the belt can actually handle, so I think we should be fine. Well, this turned very complicated really fast. Of course, I knew that I was going to have to feed in the intermediate items into intermediate products on their turn, but yeah. So, for example, I'm making those reinforced iron plates over here. Those iron plates are going to be transported through this belt into the next item over here. We're also making some, I think this is the rotors on the left here, that are being transported up and then all the way to the back, where we are making our motors. So yeah, it's actually, it does look really nice and satisfying, but it did take me quite a while to make sure I had that properly figured out. We also ran into some space issues over here because, well, I do need to bring some items up. I need to bring some items down. Well, not necessarily down. When I'm saying down, what I meant is back. Because so, for example, over here, we have these items being constructed. We are only going to need those on the next level. So I'm actually feeding them back to the front of the building, so we have the room to put them on the lift and bring them up again. So yeah, that's a lot of fiddling around with belts, and actually setting up these belts is costing me way more time to set than compared to setting up the base structure. So if you're wondering where all your time goes in this game, apparently it's setting up belts. Actually, no. Well, yes and no. Definitely belts is something that takes a lot of time. Actually, setting up these belts that are bringing in all the ore that we're going to need for this huge facility took so much time. We have double belts. We have coal, we have iron, we have copper coming in. And we have so much requirements in terms of raw materials that we actually needed 4 belts. And all these 4 belts are, well, pretty much completely used. Not entirely, but almost to the full maximum amount that you can put on a single Mark 4 belt, I believe. Is that what we're making? Yeah, Mark 4 belts. I did manage to make use of most of the materials that we have left in this little corner over here. Other than the limestone, of course, which we have a lot of, but we don't actually need a lot of for the moment. So yeah. Actually, there's a belt with, there should be a belt with limestone as well. But I still have a lot of concrete production from that facility that we built, I don't know, 20 episodes ago. The concrete facility over here was producing way more than we actually needed, so I figured, well, why not just use that and use our bus? Because quite frankly, so far I haven't really been using our bus all that much. So I figured, hey, I have it over here anyway. As you can see, it's ending right next to our facility, so might as well use that. But yeah, actually setting up all these basic logistics took way more time than I expected. I expected to be mostly fiddling around with the planning, but no, just the basics is what's taking up all the time. Oh no, speaking about things taking up a lot of time, I actually connected all those belts to the facility. The reason I did that is I wanted to make sure all the items were going into the correct belts, which of course you can all track on paper and stuff like that, but if you make one single mistake, you could clog up your entire facility, which actually is exactly what I've done over here, because for some reason we have copper ore going into this foundry rather than iron ore. So not only did I connect this up wrong, I'm going to have to declog this entire belt of foundries. That's gonna be a lot of fun. But I managed to declog most of our system. It actually took forever to do so. Apparently you just basically need to delete all the belts, all the sorters and stuff like that, because things will apparently get stuck in sorters, or splitters I should say. So every time I thought I had it completely sorted out, nope. It turned out there were a few more items, and just a single item of the wrong type will of course completely block your production chain. So that was really annoying, but I managed to do it. We actually have a sort of functioning facility now. Now the idea behind this is that it's only going to be the basics of the facility currently working. So we're producing these iron rods, as you can see. They're not actually going anywhere just yet. They're just being exported to the next level, but the next level isn't done yet. So this will get backed up at some point, which is actually a good thing, because I'm using this type of manifold construction. Normally, if you start the entire facility up at the same time, that actually takes a long time to balance each other out, itself out, I should say, for the simple reason that, of course, the splitters split at 50-50 every time, but if you do it this way, it will back up, and then as soon as you start up the next level of the production chain, everything will be working at 100 speed from the get-go. Now, looking at this, apparently there is something not working, because we have these rods going in. Oh wait, no, actually the screws already backed up because of the insanely high production of screws that we need for this build. I think we need something like 800 screws per minute, so I have 2 completely full belts of screws being produced inside of this facility. Anyway, let's jump to the next level. I do have to say I like the look of these elevators. As you can see, we are using kind of double lifts in order to get these things where they need to go. Not entirely sure what's special about them, nothing really I suppose, but they kind of look really nice along these massive lines of production units. The fact that these are completely backed up just makes it look even better. I like the design. It's not the most neat design, I suppose, but yeah, it kind of fits with the whole theme of the diagonal wall over there, and with the belts kind of moving side by side with the walls, just makes it look really organized. Now, by far the most satisfying part about this build is the end. The top floor looks so amazing with all this glass. I know. I've been using glass in all my builds in the previous episodes, and there's a very good reason for that, because I just think it looks awesome. I really like how the shadows, the light turn out as well. It's a really nice detail in the game that the developers added, so that just makes it look very natural. And yeah, apparently we have some rain coming in here as well. Oh yeah, actually I have a hole in my roof, and apparently the rain is coming right through that. That's a detail I hadn't noticed before. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, so we're pretty much done. You might wonder, okay, if we're done, why is this not actually working? Why is there no materials on these belts? And that is because we have to bring in several of the items from a different facility. The reason being that I'm using some of the alternative recipes that use plastics and rubbers and things like that. And of course we don't have rubber or plastic in this side of the map. We do have that on the other side of the map, and that is where trucks will be coming in. Which is where these truck stops come in. So we have a truck stop for concrete, because once again we are making some of the concrete outside of this facility. We have 2 truck stops, one for plastics and one for rubber, that will make use of that liquid facility that we have on the other side of the map. And then we have a final truck stop for quick wire, because actually we also need quite a bit of quick wire for all of our alternative recipes. We are making a huge amount of quick wire actually, so that's huge, hugely important and useful by now. We haven't actually been using most of that so far, and that will take care of most of our other inputs. Now, speaking of outputs, we also have to make sure everything is also coming back to our main storage facility. As you can see, I have this outgoing belt here, which is currently making the most boring items go on my main belt. Now the reason for that is that we are using a lot of those mixed belts in our facility, which means that we also need to make sure those belts always keep running, because of course if the wrong item is backed up, then the entire belt will stop. It's a kind of a problem when you're using mixed belts. So it's really easy to fix. You just need to make sure that not only have an incoming belt, but the belt also goes out somewhere, so the belt can never get stuck. Now, due to the fact that I had my facility running for a while before it was completely functional, things like the wires and etc. backed up, which is why you see so many of those base items coming by. because those belts are currently clogged up, and I actually haven't automated my truck facilities just yet. So that's the only reason that this belt is not currently showing you the end result. But other than that, as soon as I enable those trucks, we are going to get the items that we actually want on these belts. The wires and cables and things like that are going to be used, so they will no longer show up on this belt. And just in case, I have this sink over here that is kind of filtering out the overflow on the belt if there is an overflow at all, which is mainly intended to kind of speed up this process to make sure the actual facility comes back online as soon as we can. And after that, once it's actually up online, we should be able to just remove this sink if we want, or just leave it there because it kind of looks nice. And there we go, we have one facility making 7 different outputs, 4 trucks coming in, 4 belts coming in, all of that being processed into a huge mix of belts and lifts and things like that inside of here. Even though it looks very simple and straightforward from the outside, it definitely isn't in the inside. Now, I've learned a lot from this build, but I can imagine this might have been a little bit hard to follow, and it actually feeds into what I've built I will be discussing in the next episode, when we're going to be talking about where I will be taking this channel in terms of Satisfactory from here on out. What I've learned from this build, and yeah, make sure you tune in for that. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I will catch you in the next one.